The Lockheed P-2 Neptune was a maritime patrol and anti-submarine warfare aircraft. It was developed for the U.S. Navy by Lockheed to replace the Lockheed PV-1 Ventura and PV-2 Harpoon, and being replaced in turn with the Lockheed P-3 Orion. Designed as a land-based aircraft, the Neptune never made a carrier landing, although a small number of aircraft were converted and deployed as carrier-launched stopgap nuclear bombers which would have to ditch or recover at land bases. The type was successful in export and saw service with several armed forces. Design and development. Development of a new land-based patrol bomber began early in World War II, with design work starting at Lockheed's Vegas subsidiary as a private venture on December 6, 1941. At first, the new design was considered a low priority compared to other aircraft in development at the time, with Vega also developing and producing the PV-2 Harpoon patrol bomber. On February 19, 1943, the U.S. Navy signed a letter of intent for two prototypes P-2 Versus, which was confirmed by a formal contract on April 4, 1944 with a further 15 aircraft being ordered 10 days later. It was not until 1944 that the program went into full swing. A major factor in the design was ease of manufacture and maintenance, and this may have been a major factor in the type's long life and worldwide success. The first aircraft flew in May 1945. Production began in 1946, and the aircraft was accepted into service in 1947. Beginning with the P-2V5F model, the Neptune became one of the first aircraft in operational service to be fitted with both piston and jet engines. The Convair B-36, several Boeing C-97 Stratofreighter, Fairchild C-123 Provider, and Avro Shackleton aircraft were also so equipped. To save the weight and complexity of two separate fuel systems, the jet engines on the P-2 Versus did not burn jet fuel, they burned the same fuel as the piston engines, 115 Euro 145 avers. The jet pods were fitted with intake doors that were kept closed when the J-34s were not running to prevent them from windmilling, allowing for economical piston engine-only long-endurance search and patrol operations. In normal U.S. Navy operations, the jet engines were run at full power to expedite and assure all takeoffs, then shut down when the aircraft reached a safe altitude. Also, the jets were started and kept running at flight idle during low-altitude anti-submarine and/or anti-shipping operations at sea as a safety measure in case one of the radials developed problems. Normal crew access was via a ladder on the aft bulkhead of the nose wheel well to a hatch on the left side of the wheel well, then forward to the observer nose or up through another hatch to the main deck. There was also a hatch in the floor of the aft fuselage, near the sonar buoy chutes. Operational history. Early Cold War. Prior to the introduction of the P-3 Orion in the mid-1960s, the Neptune was the primary U.S. land-based anti-submarine patrol aircraft, intended to be operated as the hunter of a hunter-killer group, with destroyers employed as killers. Several features aided the P-2 in its hunter role. Sonar buoys could be launched from a station in the aft portion of the fuselage and monitored by radio. Some models were equipped with pointable twin .50 caliber machine guns in the nose, but most had a forward observation bubble with an observer seat, a feature often seen in images. The ANASQ-8 magnetic anomaly detector was fitted in an extended tail, producing a paper chart. Unmarked charts were not classified, but those with annotations were classified as secret. A belly-mounted ANAPS-20 surface search radar enabled detection of surfaced and snorkeling submarines at considerable distances. As the P-2 was replaced in the U.S. Navy by the P-3A Orion in active fleet squadrons in the early and mid-1960s, the P-2 continued to remain operational in the Naval Air Reserve through the mid-1970s, primarily in its SP-2 hours version. As active fleet squadrons transitioned to the P-3B and P-3C in the mid and late 1960s and early 1970s, the Naval Air Reserve P-2s were eventually replaced by P-3As and P-3Bs, and the P-2 exited active U.S. naval service. VP-23 was the last active-duty patrol squadron to operate the SP-2 hours, retiring its last Neptune on February 20, 1970, while the last Naval Reserve Patrol Squadron to operate the Neptune, VP-94, retired its last SP-2 hours in 1978. Nuclear bomber. At the end of World War II, the U.S. Navy felt the need to acquire a nuclear strike capability to maintain its political influence. In the short term, carrier-based aircraft were the best solution. Nuclear munitions at that time were bulky and required a large aircraft to carry them. The U.S. Navy improvised a carrier-based nuclear strike aircraft by modifying the P-2 Neptune for carrier takeoff using jet-assisted takeoff rocket boosters, with initial takeoff tests in 1948. However, the Neptune could not land on a carrier, therefore the crew had to either make their way to a friendly land base after a strike, or ditch in the sea near a U.S. Navy vessel. It was replaced in this emergency role by the North American A.J. Savage, the first nuclear strike aircraft that was fully capable of carrier launch and recovery operations. It was also short-lived in that role as the U.S. Navy was adopting fully jet-powered nuclear strike aircraft. Covered operations P-2 V-7 B-69A variants. In 1954 under Project Cherry, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency obtained 5 newly built P-2 V-7 and converted these into P-2 V-7 B-69A variants by Lockheed's Skunk Works at Hangar B-5 in Burbank, California, for the CIA's own private fleet of cover ELINT Ferret aircraft. Later, to make up for P-2 V-7 B-69A operational losses, the CIA obtained and converted 2 existing U.S. Navy P-2 V-7s, one in September 1962, and one in December 1964 to P-2 V-7 B-69A Phase 6 standard, and also acquired an older P-2 V-5 from the U.S. Navy as a training aircraft in 1963. Test flights were made by lead aircraft at Edwards AFB from 1955 to 1956, all the aircraft painted with dark sea blue color but with USAF markings. In 1957 one P-2 V-7U was sent to Eglin AFB for testing aircraft performance at low level and under adverse conditions. The initial 2 aircraft were sent to Europe, based at Wiesbaden, West Germany, but were later withdrawn in 1959 when the CIA reduced its cover aircraft assets in Europe. The CIA sent the other 2 P-2 V-7 B-69s to Hsinchu Air Base, Taiwan, where by December 1957, they were given to a Black Op unit, the 34th Squadron, better known as the Black Bat Squadron, of the Republic of China Air Force. These were painted in ROCAF Taiwan markings. The ROCAF Taiwan P-2 V-7 B-69A's mission was to conduct low-level penetration flights into mainland China to conduct ELINT Ferret missions including mapping out China's air defense networks, inserting agents via airdrop, and dropping leaflets and supplies. The agreement for plausible deniability between U.S. and Republic of China governments meant the RB-69A would be manned by ROCAF Taiwan crew while conducting operational missions, but would be manned by CIA crew when ferrying RB-69A out of Taiwan or other operational area to U.S. The P-2 V-7 B-69A flew with ROCAF Taiwan Black Bat Squadron over China from 1957 to November 1966. All 5 original aircraft were lost with all hands on board. In January 1967, 2 remaining RB-69s flew back to NAS Alameda, California, and were converted back to regular U.S. Navy P-2H P-2 V-7 ASW aircraft configurations. Most of the 34th Squadron's Black Op missions still remain classified by the CIA, although a CIA internal draft history, low-level technical reconnaissance over mainland China, reference CSHP 2.348, written in 1972 that covers Taiwan 34th Squadron's Black Op missions is known to be in existence but will not be declassified by the CIA until after 2022. Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, the Neptune was used by the U.S. Navy as a gunship, an overland reconnaissance and sensor deployment aircraft, and in its traditional role as a maritime patrol aircraft. The Neptune was also utilized by the U.S. Army's first radio research company, call sign Crazy Cat, based at Cam Ranh Bay in South Vietnam, as an electronic ferret aircraft intercepting low-powered tactical voice and Morse code radio signals. The U.S. Army operated the P-2 from 1967 until 1972, flying 42,500 hours with no accidents. Observation Squadron 67, call sign Lindy, was the only P-2 Neptune aircraft squadron to ever receive the Presidential Unit citation, flying Igloo-White missions sowing seismic and acoustic sensors over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. VO-67 lost 3 OP-2E aircraft and 20 aircrew to ground fire during its secret missions into Laos and Vietnam in 1967-68. The ROCAF Taiwan's secret 34th Squadron's B-69A P-2 V-7U Alient SIGINT aircraft flew a low-level electronic reconnaissance from Da Nang, flying over Than hectocubed a province on August 20, 1963 to investigate an air resupply drop zone that turned out to be a set trap for a Republic of China Air Force C-123B airdrop mission 10 days earlier due to the air-inserted agents having been captured and turned. Next year, an air defense radar mapping mission was also flown by 34th Squadron's B-69A P-2 V-7U aircraft into North Vietnam and Laos on the night of March 16, 1964. The B-69A took off from Da Nang, flew up the Gulf of Tonkin before coasting in near Haiphong, then flew down North Vietnam and the Laos border. The mission was requested by SOG for helping plan the insert or resupply of agents. 7 AAA sites, 14 early warning radar sites and 2 GCI radar signals were detected. Falklands War The Argentine Naval Aviation had received at least 16 Neptunes in different variants since 1958, including 8 former RAF examples for use in the Escuadrilla-era naval de-exploration Cube N. They were intensively used in 1978 during the Operation Sobrania against Chile, including over the Pacific Ocean. During the Falklands War in 1982, the last 2 airframes in service played a key role of reconnaissance and aiding Dassault's Super Permel tenders, particularly on May 4 attack against HMS Sheffield. The lack of spare parts, caused by the U.S. having enacted an arms embargo in 1977 due to the Dirty War, led to the type being retired before the end of the war. Argentine Air Force Lockheed C-130 Hercules took over the task of searching for targets for strike aircraft. In 1983, the unit was reformed with Lockheed L-188 Electras modified for maritime surveillance. In 1994 these were replaced with P-3B Orions. Other military operators The Canadian version of the Lockheed Neptune served as an anti-submarine, anti-shipping and maritime reconnaissance aircraft in the RCAF Maritime Air Command from 1955, being fitted with just piston engines initially. In 1957, the Neptunes had 2 underwing Westinghouse J-34 jet engine pods installed. This conversion provided additional thrust for an improved takeoff, increased endurance by allowing higher weights of fuel and generally improved the overall performance of the aircraft. Armament included 2 torpedoes, mines, depth charges, bombs carried internally plus unguided rockets mounted externally underwing. A total of 25 Neptunes served with nose 404, 405 and 407 squadrons. Upon unification of the Canadian forces in 1968, the Neptune was redesignated the CP-122 and was replaced by the Canadair Camp 107 August the same year. The Royal Air Force Coastal Command operated 52 P-2 V-5s, designated Neptune Mr. 1s as a stopgap modern maritime patrol aircraft until the Avro Shackleton could enter service. They were used from between 1952 and March 1957, being used for airborne early warning experiment as well as for maritime patrol. In Australia, the Netherlands, and the U.S. Navy, its tasks were taken over by the larger and more capable Lockheed P-3 Orion, and by the 1970s, it was in use only by patrol squadrons in the U.S. Naval Reserve and the Dutch Navy. The U.S. Naval Reserve abandoned its last Neptunes in 1978, those aircraft also having been replaced by the P-3 Orion. By the 1980s, the Neptune had fallen out of military use in most purchasing nations, replaced by newer aircraft. In Japan, The Neptune was license-built from 1966 by Kawasaki as the P-2J, with the piston engines replaced by IHI-built T-64 turboprops. Kawasaki continued their manufacture much later than Lockheed did. The P-2J remained in service until 1984. Civilian firefighting P-2/P-2 Versus are currently employed in aerial firefighting roles by operators such as Minden Air Corporation and Neptune Aviation Services. The firefighters can carry 2,080 gallons of retardant and have a service life of 15,000 hours. Neptune proposes to replace them with British Aerospace 146 aircraft which are estimated to have a service life of 80,000 hours and carry upwards of 3,000 gallons of retardant. The Truculent Turtle The third production P-2V1 was chosen for a record-setting mission, ostensibly to test crew endurance and long-range navigation but also for publicity purposes, to display the capabilities of the U.S. Navy's latest patrol bomber. Its nickname was the Turtle, which was painted on the aircraft's nose. However, in press releases immediately before the flight, the U.S. Navy referred to it as the Truculent Turtle. Loaded with fuel in extra tanks fitted in practically every spare space in the aircraft, the Turtle set out from Perth, Australia to the United States. With a crew of 4, the aircraft set off on September 9, 1946, with a RATO. 2.5 days later, the Turtle touched down in Columbus, Ohio, 11,236.6 miles from its starting point. It was the longest unrefueled flight made to that point, 4,000 miles longer than the U.S. Air Force's Boeing B-29's Superfortress record. This would stand as the absolute unrefueled distance record until 1962, and would remain as a piston-engined record until 1986 when Dick Rutan's Voyager would break it in the process of circumnavigating the globe. The Turtle is preserved at the National Museum of Naval Aviation at NAS Pensacola. Variants. Lockheed produced 7 main variants of the P-2V. In addition, Kawasaki built the turboprop-powered P-2J in Japan. P-2V1, prototype, 2 built. Powered by two 2,300 horsepower Reiter 3350-8 engines with 4-bladed propellers, with armament of 2.50 and machine guns in nose, tail and dorsal turrets, and 8,000 pounds of stores in an internal bomb bay. P-2V1, first production model with a 3350-8A engine. Provision for 16 5-inches HVAR or 411 3 of 4 inches Tiny Tim rockets underwing. 14 built. P-2V2, fifth production P-2V1 modified as a prototype for P-2V2. Powered by with water-injected R3350-24W engines. P-2V2 second production model, powered by two 2,800 horsepower R3350-24W engines driving and 3-bladed propellers. Nose turret replaced by attack nose fitted with 6 fixed 20mm cannon. First 8 aircraft retain bell tail turret fitted with twin .50 machine guns, with remaining aircraft using Emerson tail turret with twin 20mm cannon. 80 built. P-2V2 and Polar Bear, 2 P-2V2 modified for polar exploration under Project Ski Jump. Armament removed, with ski landing gear and provision for JATO rockets. Fitted with early MAD gear for magnetic survey purposes. Used for Operation Deep Freeze Antarctic exploration. The specially modified P-2 Versus had 16-foot-long aluminum skis that were attached to the main landing gear units that when retracted, tucked into fairing just below the engines. This way the modified P-2 Versus could still land on a regular runway surface. P-2V2S, one P-2V2 modified as a prototype anti-submarine variant with an ANAPS-20 search radar and additional fuel. P-2V3. Improved patrol bomber with 3,200 horsepower R3350-26W engines with jet stack engine exhausts. 53 built. P-2V3B, conversions from other P-2V3 models, including P-2V3C and a 3W, fitted with the ASB-1 low-level radar bombing system. 16 converted. P-2V3C, stopgap carrier-based one-way nuclear-armed bomber, not intended to return for a landing on a carrier. Fitted with JATO rocket to aid takeoff from carrier and more fuel. Nose guns and dorsal turret removed to save weight. 11 P-2V3s and 1 P-2V2 modified. P-2V3W, airborne early warning variant, ANAPS-20 search radar. 30 built. P-2V3Z, VIP combat transport with armored cabin and rear fuselage with seats for 6 passengers. Retained tail turret. 2 converted from P-2V3s. P-2V4, improved anti-submarine aircraft. Fitted with ANAPS-20 search radar and provision for dropping sonobuoys with additional dedicated sonobuoy operator. Underwing tip tanks added, with searchlight in nose of starboard tip tank. First 25 aircraft powered by 3,200 horsepower or 3350-26WA engines, with remaining 27 powered by 3,250 horsepower Writer 3350-30W turbo compound engines. 52 built in total. Surviving aircraft redesignated P-2D in 1962. P-2V5, fitted with Emerson nose turret with two 20mm cannon replacing solid nose of earlier versions, while retaining dorsal and tail turrets. New, larger, jettisonable tip tanks, with traverable searchlight slaved to nose turret in front of starboard tip tank and ANAPS-8 radar in nose of port tip tank. ANAPS-20 search radar under fuselage. Later aircraft featured glazed observation nose and MAD gear in place of nose and tail turrets, and revised crew accommodation, with many earlier aircraft refitted. Dorsal turret often removed. 424 built. P-2V5F, modification with two 3,250 pounds force J-34 jet engines to increase power on takeoff, and 3,500 horsepower or 3350-32W piston engines. The J-34 engines and a 3350 had a common fuel system burning AV gas rather than having dedicated jet fuel. 4 underwing rocket pylons removed but increased 10,000 pounds weapon load. Redesignated P-2E in 1962. P-2V5FD, P-2V5F converted for drone launch missions. All weaponry deleted. Redesignated DP-2E in 1962. P-2V5FE, P-2V5F with additional electronic equipment. Redesignated EP-2E in 1962. P-2V5FS, P-2V5F with Julie Jezebel ASW gear, featuring AQA-3 long-range acoustic search equipment and Julie explosive echo sounding gear. Redesignated SP-2E in April 2, 1962. Designation applied to P-2V5F with special SIGINTELINT equipment used by the U.S. Army's first radio research company at Cam Ranh Bay. Carrying a crew of up to 15, the April 2E was the heaviest P-2, with a takeoff weight of up to 80,000 pounds. 5 converted. NP-2E, single P-2E converted as permanent test aircraft. OP-2E, modified for use as part of Operation Igloo White for sensor deployment over Southeast Asia with Observation Squadron 67. Fitted with terrain avoidance radar in nose, chaff dispensers, wing-mounted gun pods and waist guns. 12 converted. P-2V6, multi-role version with length and weapons bay and provision for aerial mine-laying and photo reconnaissance. Smaller ANAPS-70 radar instead of ANAPS-20. Initially fitted with gun turrets as P-2V5, although retaining ability to be refitted with glazed nose. A total of 67 were built for the U.S. Navy and France. Redesignated P-2F in 1962. P-2V6B, anti-shipping version with provision to carry 2 AUMN-2 petrol anti-ship missiles. 16 built. Later redesignated P-2V6M then MP-2F, P-2V6F, P-2V6 refitted with J-34 jet engines. Redesignated P-2G, P-2V6T, crew trainer conversion with armament deleted, wingtip tanks often deleted. Redesignated TP2F, P-2V7, last Neptune variant produced by Lockheed, powered by a 3350-32W and J-34 engines. Fitted with lower drag wingtip tanks, ANAPS-20 search radar in a revised radome and a bulged cockpit canopy. Early aircraft were fitted with defensive gun turrets, but these were removed as for the P-2V5. 287 were built, including 48 assembled by Kawasaki in Japan. Redesignated P-2 hours in 1962. P-2V7B, 15 aircraft with non-glazed nose fitted with 4 fixed 20mm cannon for Royal Netherlands Naval Air Service. Subsequently fitted with glazed nose and modified to SP2 hours standard. Supplemented by 4 SP2 hours from France, P-2V7LP, 4 aircraft built with wheel ski landing gear and JATO gear for Antarctic operations. Redesignated LP2J, P-2V7S, additional ASWECM equipment including Julie Jezebel gear. Redesignated SP2 hours, P-2V7U, naval designation of the RB-69A variant. April 2 H. Specialized night and all-weather ground attack variant fitted with FLIR and low-light TV systems, tail turret, fuselage-mounted grenade launchers and downwards-firing miniguns. Bombs and napalm carried on underwing pylons. 4 converted in 1968 for Heavy Attack Squadron 21 for operation over South Vietnam. DP2 hours, P2 hours converted for drone launch and control. EP2 hours, single P2 hours modified with UHF telemetry equipment instead of ASW systems. NP2 hours, testbed conversion of P2VH. RB-69A, 5 new built and 2 converted from P2V7s for CIA cover operations, obtained with USAF help and operated by ROCAF Taiwan's 34th Squadron. Aerial Reconnaissance ELINT platform, modular sensor packages fitted depended on the mission needs. Originally fitted with Westinghouse APQ-56 side-looking airborne radar, the APQ-24 search radar, the Fairchild Mark IIIA cameras, the April 9, 13 radar intercept receiver, the QRC-15DF system, the APA-69ADF display, the APA-74 pulse analyzer, the Ampex tape recorder, the System 3 receiver to intercept enemy communications, the APS-54RWR, a noise jammer, the RADAN system Doppler radar navigation, and others. In May 1959, an upgrade program known as Phase 6 was approved, and added the ATIR air-to-air radar jammer, replacing April 9, 13 with ALQ-28 ferret system, the QRC-15. 3 14-channel recorders and 1 7-channel high-speed recorder to record ELINT systems, the K-band receiver, the ASN-7 navigation computer replacing RADAN, and Fulton Skyhook system. Neptune Mr. 1, British designation of P-2V5. 52 delivered. CP-122 Neptune, RCAF designation of P-2V7. Jetpod not initially fitted to 25 P-2V7 aircraft delivered to RCAF, but subsequently retrofitted, Kawasaki P-2J, Japanese variant produced by Kawasaki for JMSDF with T-64 turboprop engines, various other improvements. 82 built. Operators. Military operators Argentina, Argentine Navy Euro-Argentine Naval Aviation, Escuadrilla Aeronaval de-Exploration. Australia, Royal Australian Air Force, No. 10 Squadron RAAF, No. 11 Squadron RAAF. Brazil, Brazilian Air Force, 1 a degree per 7 a degree Grupo de Avia Picavolt Poundo. Canada, Royal Canadian Air Force, No. 404 Squadron RCAF, No. 405 Squadron RCAF, No. 407 Squadron RCAF. France, French Navy, Japan, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, Netherlands, Dutch Naval Aviation Service, Portugal, Portuguese Air Force, Esquadra 61, Montijo Air Base. Republic of China Air Force, 34th Black Bat Squadron. United Kingdom, Royal Air Force, Number 36 Squadron RAF, Number 203 Squadron RAF, Number 210 Squadron RAF, Number 217 Squadron RAF, Number 236 Operational Conversion Unit RAF. United States, United States Army, United States Marine Corps, United States Navy, Central Intelligence Agency operated 7 B-69A in USAF colors. Civilian operators Aero Union, Heliworks Ltda. Of Chile, operated a former Aero Union Neptune Firestar, Minden Air, Neptune Aviation Services. Survivors, there are a few Neptunes that have been restored and are on display in museums and parks. Argentina on display. SP2 hours. 2P112 a Euro Museo Aeronaval of Argentine Naval Aviation. This is the Neptune which tracked HMS Sheffield. Australia airworthy. P2 hours. 149,073 a Euro Historical Aircraft Restoration Society, Illawarra Regional Airport, New South Wales, Australia. Ex-Royal Australian Air Force A89-273, now civil registered VHIOY. On display. SP2 hours. A89-280, RAAF Base Townsville entrance, owned by RAAF Museum. Canada on display. EP2 hours. 147,969 a Euro Greenwood Military Aviation Museum in Nova Scotia, Canada. Chile under restoration. SP2 hours. 147,967, to be displayed is the Neptune/Firestar registered CC2 of Heliworks Ltda. Currently dismantled in Concepta Cube den Carriel Sur Airport, the XBU 147,967 and N703AU Tanker 03, its incorporation into the collection of Chile's Museo Nacional Arona Utica y del Espacio at the former Los Cerrillos Airport in Santiago, was announced during the ceremony of the 69th anniversary of museum on July 4, 2013. United Kingdom on display. P2 hours. 204 a Euro Royal Air Force Museum Cusford. United States airworthy. P2V5. 128,422 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 131,424 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. P2V5 FP2E. 128,346 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 128,382 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 131,445 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 131,459 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 131,482 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 131,502 a Euro. Evergreen Trade Incorporated in McMinnville, Oregon. P2V7/P2 hours. 140,154 a Euro Harold Shepard Jr. DBA in Riverton, Wyoming. 140,443 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 140,972 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 143,173 a Euro Richard Camp in Lewis, Delaware. 145,906 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 147,949 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 148,341 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 148,346 a Euro Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. 148,356 Euro. Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana, 148,359 Euro. Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana, 148,360 Euro. Erickson Aircraft Collection in Madras, Oregon, 148,362 Euro. Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. P-2 V7 SSP 2 hours. 135,588 Euro. Harold Shepard in Riverton, Wyoming, 144,681 Euro. Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana, 145,915 Euro. Mid-Atlantic Air Museum in Reading, Pennsylvania, 147,965 Euro. Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana, 148,339 Euro. Neptune Aviation Services Incorporated in Missoula, Montana. On display. P-2 V1. 89,082 Truculent Turtle Euro. National Museum of Naval Aviation, NAS Pensacola, Florida. P-2 V5 FP2E. 128,392, NAS Brunswick Main Gate, NAS Brunswick, Maine. 131,410 Euro. NAS Jacksonville Memorial Park, NAS Jacksonville, Florida. P-2 V5 FS April 2 E. 131,485 Euro. United States Army Aviation Museum in Fort Rucker, Alabama. P-2 V5 FS SP2E. 128,402 Euro. Pueblo Wiesbrod Aircraft Museum in Pueblo, Colorado. P-2 V7/P2 hours. 147,957 Euro. Palmer Air and Space Museum, adjacent to Davis-Monthan AFB in Tucson, Arizona, 147,966 Euro. South Georgia Technical College in Americus, Georgia. P-2 V7S April 2 H. 135,620 Euro. Palmer Air and Space Museum adjacent to Davis-Monthan AFB in Tucson, Arizona. P-2 V7S SP2 hours. 147,954 Euro. Museum of Aviation at Robbins AFB, Georgia. The P-2 Neptune is painted to represent a USAF Taiwan B-69A, 141,234 Euro. National Museum of Naval Aviation in NAS Pensacola, Florida, 150,279 Euro. Gate Guard at the Marine Corps Base Hawaii, Hawaii. Relocated from former NAS Barbers Point, Hawaii in 1998 following that base's closure due to BRAC action. Under restoration. P-2 V5 FSS P-2E. 131,542 Euro for static display by the Historic Aircraft Restoration Project at Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn, New York. Specifications. P-2 V3 Data from combat aircraft since 1945. General characteristics, crew, 9 to 11, length, 77 feet 10 inches, wingspan, 100 feet 0 in, height, 28 feet 4 in, wing area, 1,000 FTA squared, empty weight, 34,875 pounds, max takeoff weight, 64,100 pounds, power plant, Tua, Writer 3350-26W Cyclone 18 radial engine, 3,200 horsepower wet each, propellers, 3-bladed propeller, 1 per engine, performance, maximum speed. 278 kn, cruise speed, 155 kn, range, 3,458 mi, armament, rockets, 2.75 in FFA or in removable wing-mounted pods, bombs, 8,000 pounds including free-fall bombs, depth charges, and torpedoes. P-2 hours equals. Data from combat aircraft since 1945, general characteristics, crew, 7 Euro 9, length, 91 feet 8 inches, wingspan, 103 feet 10 in, height, 29 feet 4 in, wing area, 1,000 ft², empty weight, 49,935 pounds, max takeoff weight, 79,895 pounds, power plant, TUA, Westinghouse J34WE34 turbojet, 3,400 pound forces each, TUA, Wright 3350-32W Cyclone turbo compound radial engine. 3,700 horsepower wet each, propellers, 4-bladed propeller, 1 per engine. Performance, maximum speed, 316 kn, cruise speed, 180 kn, range, 1,912 mi, service ceiling, 22,400 feet, armament, rockets, 2.75 in FFA are in removable wing-mounted pods, bombs, 8,000 pounds including free-fall bombs, depth charges, and torpedoes. Accidents and incidents. On November 27, 1950, a P-2V2 crashed while conducting a test run with rockets near Kenner Point in Hawaii. The starboard wing separated from the aircraft. The crew of 5 died upon impact. On November 6, 1951, a P-2V of VP-6 carrying out a weather reconnaissance mission over international waters off Vladivostok was attacked and shot down by a number of MiG-15s. All 10 crew were killed. On January 18, 1953, a P-2V of VP-22 was shot down off Swatow in the Formosa Straits by Chinese anti-aircraft fire. 11 of 13 crewmen were rescued by a U.S. Coast Guard PBM-5 under fire from shore batteries on Nanotau Island. Attempting to take off in 8 to 12-foot swells, the PBM crashed. 10 survivors out of 19 total were rescued by USS Halsey Powell. During the search effort, a PBM-5 from VP-40 received fire from a small-caliber machine gun, and USS Gregory received fire from shore batteries. On September 4, 1954, a P-2V5 of VP-19 operating from NAS Atsuji ditched in the Sea of Japan, 40 miles off the coast of Siberia after an attack by 2 Soviet Air Force's MiG-15 Fagots. 1 crewman was lost, and the other 9 were rescued by a USAF Grumman Albatross amphibian. On June 22, 1955, a P-2V5 of VP-9, flying a patrol mission from Kodiak, Alaska, was attacked over the Bering Straits by 2 Soviet Air Force's MiG-15s. The P-2V crash-landed on St. Lawrence Island after an engine was set afire. Of the 11 crew members, including pilot Richard F. Fisher, co-pilot David M. Lockhart, Donald E. Sonic, Thaddeus Mazayats, Martin E. Berg, Eddie Benko, David Assad and Charles Shields, 4 sustained injuries due to gunfire and 6 were injured during the landing. The U.S. government demanded $724,947 in compensation. The USSR finally paid half this amount. On April 12, 1957, a P-2V5F of VP-26 crashed on takeoff during a short takeoff practice exercise at NAS Brunswick, Maine. The apparent cause was a runaway Varicam elevator control which caused a hammerhead stall at very low altitude. The aircraft did an overhead loop reversing its direction but crashed into the woods near the takeoff end of the runway next to the base golf course. There were no survivors. On February 1, 1958, USAF C-118A 53-3277 collided in mid-air with U.S. Navy Lockheed P-2 Neptune 127,723 over Newark, California, killing 47 of 49 on board both aircraft and 1 person on the ground. On February 4, 1959, RAAF A-89-308 crashed at Richmond NSW, Australia. All 8 crew died. The port engine began to disintegrate causing a fuel leak in the wheel well. The resulting fire severed the magnesium wing spar, and the aircraft fell from the sky before the crew could bail out. On March 25, 1960, an B-69A P-2V7U crashed into a hill near Kunsan Air Base, South Korea, during a low-level ferry flight from Hsinchu, Taiwan to stage area in Kunsan, South Korea. All 14 aircrew on board were killed. On November 6, 1961, and a B-69A P-2V7U conducting a low-level penetration flight over mainland China was shot down by ground fire over Liaodong Peninsula. All 14 aircrew on board were killed in action. On November 9, 1961, an P-2V7LP of VX-6 crashed on takeoff from Wilkes Station, Antarctica, where it had refueled en route back to McMurdo Station. 4 aircrew and 1 passenger were killed, with 4 aircrew surviving. On January 8, 1962, a B-69A-14043/54-4038 crashed into the Korea Bay while conducting ELINT and leaflet-dropping missions. All 14 aircrew on board were killed in action. On January 12, 1962, a P-2V5 flew off course during a patrol over the Denmark Strait and crashed on the Kronborg Glacier in eastern Greenland. All 12 crew were killed. The wreckage was discovered by a party of British geologists in 1966. On June 19, 1963, a B-69A-14123/54-4041 was conducting ELINT mission over mainland China, and was shot down by PLAAF MiG-17 Picafords over Linchuan, Jiangxi, after intercepted repeatedly by multiple MiG-17 PFs and to 4 picoseconds. All 14 aircrew on board were killed in action. On June 11, 1964, a B-69A P-2V7U was conducting ELINT mission over mainland China, and was shot down by Plan AF MiG-15 over Shandong Peninsula, after intercepted by MiG-15s and Il-28s. All 13 aircrew on board were killed in action. On January 22, 1965, a Royal Canadian Air Force P-2V7 number 24115 crashed short of the runway at Summerside, PEI due to running out of battery power to run the fuel pumps to the J-34 jet engines. 24115 had lost one reciprocating engine and the generator failed on the other, plus the fact that Canadian Neptunes had no generators on the jets, leading to the loss of all thrust and the subsequent crash. On September 15, 1976, an Argentine Navy Lockheed Neptune aircraft flew on a reconnaissance mission from Rio Gallegos to survey the sea ice conditions in Drake Passage at the beginning of the summer navigation season. The plane crashed in poor weather on the then uninhabited Livingston Island, Antarctica, killing all 10 aircrew and a civilian television cameraman. On September 5, 2008, a Neptune Aviation Services Lockheed Neptune registered N4235T, crashed soon after takeoff from Reno State Airport, Reno, Nevada. The left engine and then left wing were seen to catch fire before the aircraft crashed. All 3 crew members on board were killed. On June 3, 2012, while engaged in firefighting operations in Utah, a Neptune Aviation Services Lockheed Neptune registered N14447, crashed. 2 crew members were killed. See also: related development, Kawasaki P-2J, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Avro Shackleton, Theory FB-12, Breguet Atlantique, Canada Argus, Consolidated PB-4Y2 Privateer, Ilyushin Il-38, Martin P-4M Mercator, related lists, list of Lockheed aircraft, list of military aircraft of the United States, list of U.S. patrol aircraft. References. Notes Citations Bibliography Further reading, Now a plus or minus is Padin, Jorge. Now a plus or minus is Padin, Jorge Felix, ed. Lockheed P-2 Neptune. Sierra Naval 23. Bahia Blanca, Argentina, Fuerzas Aeronaves. Retrieved August 1, 2014. Arbelech, Pablo Marcelo. 50th degree Aniversario de la Escuadrilla Aeronaval de Exploración. Historia y Arqueología Maritima. Carlos May. Retrieved August 1, 2014. External links, Patrol Squadron 65 History with the Neptune, P-2 Development History, Mid-Atlantic Air Museum, Lockheed P-2V Neptune, French Navy Neptune, U.S. Navy Patrol Squadrons, Lockheed P-2 Neptune, U.S. Navy Patrol Squadrons, Flight of the Truculent Turtle, Aero Union Corporation, Mycenaean article on Neptune's P-2V water bombers and their proposed replacement with Q-300S, listing of the carrier launch conversions, Observation Squadron 67, Robert Fulton's Skyhook and Operation Cold Feet, use of P-2V aircraft, use of P-2V aircraft for Operation Deep Freeze by the U.S. Navy's Squadron VX-6, AeroWeb, list of P-2 Neptunes on display. DND Euro Canada's Air Force Euro Lockheed Camp 127 Neptune, Quonset Air Museum website, Collections tab on P-2V Neptune as direct link is not available, list of Lockheed P-2V 5 Fahrenheit per hour Neptune used by the Escadrille Aeronaval d'Exploration Q-10.